All right, do we have some time for questions? Yeah.
There are microphones on both sides of the room, so if you go to a microphone, give your name and your village, and the congressman will be happy to address your question.
I would like to know, for me, one of the biggest issues right now is voter suppression. And I would like to know the latest of what's happening in Florida and what we can all do about that.
Well, the Republicans continue to make efforts to wipe out the voters. And I think there's going to be a serious backlash. If there's one thing that the voters want, it's to be able to vote. And the Republicans seem to think otherwise. I think that particularly in the African American community, this is an enormously sensitive issue, and understandably so. And I think also in the Latino community, people are scratching their heads and saying, how come one party wants us to vote and the other party doesn't? The Republicans, in one session after another, continue to make efforts to keep people from voting. In the last session of legislature, they passed a bill that makes it very difficult for people to mail in ballots, absentee ballots. And Governor Scott is pushing even Democratic supervisors of elections here locally, for instance in Orange County and Osceola County, pushing them to purge the rolls in ways that throw off far more legitimate voters than illegitimate voters. I think eventually we're going to have to reach a point where we're going to have to establish a constitutional principle that the government has an obligation to help you to vote, not to prevent you from voting. I think that's what all this is saying.
All right, over here.
Hi, my name is Sue Asia. I'm the representative for the National Committee to Protect Social Security and Medicare. We want to thank you for all you've done. We really appreciate it. And how can we do more to help you protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and all the other programs?
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to thank almost 3 million people who signed our petition against Social Security and Medicare cuts earlier this year, a petition that I delivered to the White House and to Speaker Boehner. After the President proposed in his budget 1 Social Security benefit cut and 3 Medicare benefit cuts, we put together a petition at nocuts.com, no-cuts.com, and a number of other organizations like the Democracy for America, Howard Dean's organization, the Progressive Democrats of America, Dennis Kucinich's organization, Credo Mobile, the PCCC, and other organizations joined us in this petition campaign saying no cuts in Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid benefits, none. And we also put together a letter called the Grayson-Takano letter and had 50 members of Congress sign the letter pledging that they would vote against any and every Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid cut in benefits. Now, I think it had a dramatic effect. As soon as we showed the White House that we had 3 million people behind us, then the chatter stopped. And it's been quiet ever since. So the people spoke. People like you, other people, came to our website, signed the petition, indicated their support for our position. And in fact, the democracy, for once, was respected. If you look at the polling, you find that there's overwhelming opposition to any cuts in Social Security and Medicare benefits. There's simply no reason for it. The Social Security and Medicare system run at a profit year after year, and there'll be money in the Social Security and Medicare trust funds for many years to come. Whatever we do would represent a minor tweak in how we raise that money if we're going to do this in a responsible fashion, not a cut in benefits. So thank you. One of the great moments of this year for me, after I was reelected and sworn in again, was to be able to present that petition, particularly the one to Boehner's office. I really, really appreciate it.
Do you think it'll come up in the budget?
Yes, the deal that was just signed was one that didn't have any Social Security and Medicare cuts in it, and I think that's because people spoke up. But it's not going to go away. There's a continuing, how should I put this, billionaires lobby that the Koch brothers are animating that wants to see Social Security and Medicare cuts in benefits. So as long as they keep piping up, and as long as they have their shills on the other side of the aisle who will speak for them, I don't think it's going to go away. We're going to have to continue to fight to keep our earned benefits.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, over here.
My name is Marcia Shearer, and the last time you were here, you said something that resonated so wonderfully, and I want to repeat it for those of us who, all of us, who will be going out to campaign for Democrats at the local, state, and national level. And you said it so simply, that there is the difference, the key difference between Republicans and Democrats is the difference between we and me. That's your quote. Related to Sue's question on Medicare and Social Security, it seems to me that both programs could be funded in perpetuity if the employee contribution cap was totally removed. Would you consider submitting legislation to that effect? And if not, why not?
I have.
Yeah?
And you're right, we've actually gone to the trouble of having the Social Security Administration confirm the calculations, and it is true that if you scrap the cap, as we put it, then Social Security is solvent, not just for the next 25 years, but forever. That's right, that's correct. I want to elaborate a little bit on what you said earlier that you were kind enough to attribute to me. We is an interesting concept. It is true that we are the party of we, but I think that it goes deeper than that. It's kind of easy to be the party of we when everybody's the same. And I sometimes tell people, the reason why I'm not a Republican is it's just too hard. You know, you've got to be rich, male, straight, born again, white. And, you know, on my best day, I'm only like 4 of those. So basically, you know, what we is an interesting concept. Reach into your pocket and take out any coin, and you'll see on that coin are the words "e pluribus unum," out of many, one. So we recognize that we, intrinsic in that concept, is diversity. And we don't believe as a party that we need to somehow overcome our diversity. We don't believe that because we understand that out of many, one means that there are differences among us that make things interesting and make things fun and make things worthwhile. I have 5 children, they're all frighteningly different from each other. It makes me wonder, but I love each one of them. I love each one of them for exactly whom they are. Out of many, one means that the things that make us different are the things that make us special, not the things that make us the same. So the result of that, as I see it, is that we don't just try to overcome our differences. We don't do that at all. What we do is we cherish our differences. And we look at other people with the sense that if they're different, they're still human beings. And that's what we really means. I can address that. Sir, you've hit on one of the fundamental problems today. I had the misfortune of working as an economist for more than 2 years between college and when I finished law school. And you know, nobody else in Congress ever worked as an economist, as far as I can tell. And in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is very frustrated. The deep problem that we have today in the economy is a lack of demand. We are, in fact, a consumer culture. We have a large, growing middle class. Over 75% of our production is for the purpose of consumption. And we've had, in the past 5 years, 20% of the country simply disappear from the economy. It's true even today that almost 20% of Americans have a negative net worth. They own more than they own. The banks are not interested in them. They've simply disappeared from the finance economy and the credit economy, and to a large extent the consumer economy. And the result of that is that in order to keep things going, we've had to have large federal deficits. We've been borrowing and spending. We have had these quantitative easing programs now from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is increasing the money supply by $85 billion a month. Just to put this in perspective, in the year 2008, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet was $1 trillion. So essentially, they're doubling the money supply from where it was 5 years ago every year. That makes every dollar in your pocket that much cheaper. It makes it less valuable because there's more of them out there put out by the Federal Reserve. We do these things because we simply don't have enough money in the pockets of people who need to spend it. We have enormous, staggering amounts of money going to multinational corporations. They take it out of the country. We have enormous amounts of money going into the hands of the Koch brothers. They only spend it on political ads, mainly against me. And even the government makes some poor decisions, as you just illustrated. When you take $1 billion, which by the way is the cost of supporting 1,000 soldiers, not a very large number, 1,000 soldiers, $1 billion. You take $1 billion and you drop that into the sands of Mesopotamia in Iraq, or the mountains of Bactria in Afghanistan, it's gone. It's not coming back. You know, it gets spent over there, and that's where it is. And when you consider that we've done that every single year now for more than a decade, this year alone, I voted against it, but yesterday we voted for another $80 billion for this coming year in the war in Afghanistan. $80 billion. You realize how it would be amazing if things were on the right track when you waste your money that way. So we do have a fundamental problem in this country that we are misspending our resources. It is in fact true that every time you pay out $1 in unemployment insurance, it increases the economy by $4 because of what you just described, this recycling effect, or the multiplier effect as economists put it. Same thing is true of food stamps. Fortunately in this country, one of the things we still make for ourselves is our food. We're actually quite good at it. We export food from the United States. So when you issue food stamps, you're primarily getting people to buy things that are literally made in the United States, the food. And one of the great difficulties in a modern open economy is to make sure that the economy has enough demand in it. Greece has utterly failed in that regard. That's why they have 25% unemployment. Same thing with Spain. It's not that their unemployment benefits are too generous. It's that they can't keep the money inside the country. It's constantly leaving the country, and there's no way to sustain internal demand. So you're right. If we all woke up and listened to what John Maynard Keynes was telling us 75 years ago about what we need to do to manage properly a modern economy, we'd all be better off. If you just lay off all of it, if you eliminate government spending, eliminate taxation, eliminate regulation, you wake up the next day and all the jobs are in China.
Let's take 2 more questions.
Again, thank you for coming. I noticed that you did propose legislation to open Medicare to all, and I appreciate that. One of the things that I think is missing in the argument for opening up Medicare is the fact that the employer-based system is totally dysfunctional. Presently, large employers can negotiate to get lower insurance costs, but the small employer cannot. So therefore, the one place where jobs are being created is the small businesses are disadvantaged. They cannot provide health care. If they had access to Medicare for all, then they would not be disadvantaged in trying to get good employees and could create more jobs.
Well, yes. I mean, the point of our bill is that the existing system is entirely dysfunctional. I mean, look, these are the facts. We spend more on our healthcare than any other country in the entire world. About 17% of our gross national product goes to healthcare. The next highest country is 13%. So we're literally spending a third more on our healthcare than anyone else in the entire world. Every major industrial country in the world has universal healthcare except for us. We have 50 million people in this country still who can't see a doctor when they're sick. I think that's going to change dramatically over the next 12 months, but we'll just have to wait and see. When we spend that kind of money, we end up with results that are just really objectively bad. The Canadians, any Canadians here in the audience? Raise your hand, any Canadians? Oh good, then I can say anything I want about
No,
them.
there's one.
God bless those Canadians. They live 2 years longer on the average than Americans do. They have socialized medicine and they live 2 years longer. They also spend only 11% of their gross national product in healthcare. We spend 17% and they live 2 years longer. And you know, it can't be because of the snow. I don't think that's what's going on. And the Japanese, same thing. The Japanese spend barely 10% of their national income on healthcare. And the Japanese live 4 years longer than Americans do, despite the existence of fogo, which is blowfish that can kill you. It's sort of a random thing. Sometimes it'll kill you, sometimes it don't. Some people really like that stuff. It's like Russian roulette with food. So they live 4 years longer, and people say, like, how can we spend this much money and end up with so little to show for it? It's incredible. How is that even possible? And the fundamental answer is that the insurance companies have a conflict of interest. What they do is they charge you as much as they can get away with. They give you as little care as they can get away with in return, and they call the difference profit. In some cases, under the Medicare Advantage program, which I support, some of these companies are giving back less than 70 cents on the dollar in actual care to the customers. In the case of Medicare, it's 97 cents on the dollar goes to actual care for the patients. So we have a system that's really all messed up. We're doing our best to extend that existing system to people who don't have coverage and to make it as affordable as it can be for everyone. And to make sure that people who have insurance are not subsidizing people who don't have insurance. But there is a basic problem here, and the problem here is that there's just not a lot of competition. In many places around the country, there's one hospital. The hospital sets its rates anywhere it wants to, and everyone else, including all the doctors, are basically just stuck with it. In many places around the country, there's two hospitals. Here in Central Florida, we basically have a Florida hospital, and we have ORMC, and that's about it. There's very few independent hospitals, so therefore they have a sort of a chokehold on the local healthcare system. Now, we have spent billions upon billions of dollars creating a system that almost everybody who has it likes. It's a system where nobody complains they couldn't sign up at the website. I've never heard that complaint. Nobody complains they got dropped from the coverage. Nobody complains that they wanted to sign up but they couldn't. Nobody complains about much of anything, really, and that system is called Medicare. Medicare is far more popular than private insurance with the people who actually have it. And 100 million people in this country now get their health care from the government in one form or another, 1/3 of the population. So I looked at the situation and I said, this is kind of strange. We spend billions of dollars creating a system that extends from sea to shining sea, all the way from Barrow, Alaska, down to Key West, Florida. It's got a national network, it provides services economically, and it's open to only 1/6 of the population. That doesn't seem to make much sense. Why don't we open it to everybody who's willing to pay for it? So I introduced a 4-page bill called the Medicare You Can Buy Into Act, H.R. 500. And we'll see. The leadership of my party says that they regard it as the next best thing in healthcare. It actually helps to make the existing system more affordable because it spreads the costs over a larger group of people. And it hurts literally no one except the greenheads at the insurance companies. No one else. By the way, I introduced that bill in the year 2010, got 80 co-sponsors in 2 weeks, and the health insurance company spent $2 million to campaign against me in the following election, which I lost. So at least they were concerned about it, and I think that shows the power of the proposal. Listen, what would it be like if we said only seniors could drive on the interstate highway system? How many of you would be in favor of that, by the way? Just okay, well, that's a bad analogy to use with this audience, I can see that.
One more question.
My name is Steve Larson, and I'm from Buttonwood, and I really want to thank you for coming back a second time to speak with us. My question regards the movement in some states that have Republican-controlled legislatures to divide up the electoral vote. Is there any discussion in Congress what to do if that actually takes hold, because it will virtually throw the electoral process out the door?
All right, just by way of background, in all 48 of the 50 states right now, the electoral votes are awarded as a group for the whole state, including Florida. So in the last election, President Obama got 29 electoral votes from Florida because we have 27 members of Congress, 2 senators, and it's based upon your representation in Congress. That's how many electoral votes you have. The number of representatives you have in Congress, including the senators, determines your electoral vote. So a small state like North Dakota has 3, they have 1 representative, 2 senators. A large state like ours has far more, not quite proportionate because everyone has 2 senators. So what the Republicans have decided to do is that only in states where they have gerrymandered the representation, only in those states, only in states where they think the Democrats are going to win and get the entire block of electoral votes, only in those states are they going to try to change the system so that it's done on the basis of who wins congressional districts rather than who wins the entire state. So for instance, in the case of Florida, we have 17 Republicans representing us in the House of Representatives, 10 Democrats. By the way, in the last election, Democrats got more votes than Republicans. Republicans still ended up with a 35-seat majority because of the games they play. And this is after people in Florida passed a constitutional amendment with 62% of the vote, insisting that there be no more gerrymandering, and they did it anyway. So we're in a situation now where we have artificial lines. These artificial lines are built by the Republicans for the Republicans and for nobody else. And if they had passed this bill in the last election, instead of Barack Obama getting 29 electoral votes from Florida, instead he would have gotten 12, and the Republicans would have gotten 17. They want to do the same thing in Ohio, where it's a 50-50 state, and they gerrymandered it so that they have 12 Republican members of Congress and 4 Democrats. They want to do the same thing in Pennsylvania. In fact, they've actually introduced a bill in Pennsylvania where they have 13 Republicans and 5 Democrats, even though Pennsylvania has gone Democratic in every presidential race for a generation now. But because they temporarily control the state legislature, they've gerrymandered that state to hell and beyond. And a few other states like that, Virginia being another example, North Carolina being another example. So the point is they want to basically steal the presidency. I mean, to put it in polite terms, they want to steal the presidency. And they can't, you know, it's often the case that they can't win fairly, so they have to cheat, and they're quite willing to do that. One of the interesting things in watching them from the close quarters I do is that they don't actually respect limits. They won't stop really at anything. A good example of that is the way that they filibustered presidential appointments. More in the Obama administration than every other administration combined. That's 43 other presidents we're talking about. So the president wants to choose X. He wants to work with X. He thinks X is the right person for the job. He needs X to carry out his directives and his principles. And the Republicans say, no, we're not going to give you X. Recently, this came up with somebody I know. Mel Watt was nominated to run the housing agency. Mel Watt has been the Democratic chairman or the Democratic ranking member of the housing subcommittee on the Financial Services Committee for many years. Extremely knowledgeable about housing, extremely well qualified. And also, to be honest, as conservative a Democrat as you're ever going to see. Sometimes people jokingly refer to him as the congressman from Nations Bank. That was a joke, by the way. Sometimes I have to explain that. So Mel was nominated to run this agency. The Republicans attacked him like they attack every presidential nominee. They said Mel is too liberal, which made us literally laugh out loud when we heard that. And they said Mel doesn't know anything about housing, which also made us laugh out loud when we heard that. And that's a game they've played over and over and over again. They simply don't respect limits, they don't respect principles, they don't respect honesty. They don't make arguments that are fair arguments. So what they're doing in that context and in this context is they're trying to cheat. And there's no real that we can do in Congress short of passing constitutional amendments to prevent that. What we have to do is make sure they don't have the power to do that. That means making Pennsylvania blue, that means making Ohio blue, that means making North Carolina blue. Oh, and by the way, that means making Florida blue.
Thank you.
Well, that's why we send out very engaging emails to people. They're fun, they're interesting, they're not like anyone else sends out. If you want to sign up for our emails, go to our modestly named website, congressmanwithguts.com. And you can stay in touch that way. Thank you.
Congressman, on behalf of the best Democratic gang slash club in Florida, we want to thank you for coming. I'd like to present you with one of our shirts, and I suggest when you go back to Congress on Monday that you wear it and show this congressman who said you wouldn't get out of the villages alive. Thank all of you for coming. Remember our next meeting is January 11th at Lake Meona. Bring a friend, and happy holidays.